Kareem's mother called me cheap before I had taken off my shoes. She said it softly, smiling, with her hand resting on the marble console. It was Saturday, 6:42 p.m., and the chandelier above us hummed faintly, like it always does when the air conditioning kicks in. No one corrected her. Kareem stood beside me, holding his phone, screen dark. His father adjusted his cufflinks and looked past us toward the dining room. A housekeeper paused near the stairs, then kept walking. I had chosen the dress on purpose. Simple fabric, no logo, shoes I'd worn for years. I sat where they told me to sit, on the edge of the sofa that dipped slightly in the middle. Tea arrived in thin porcelain cups. I didn't lift mine. His mother asked where I was really from. She asked what my parents did. She asked if I planned to keep working after marriage, the way girls like me usually did. Each question landed and stayed there. At 6:51 p.m., my phone vibrated in my bag. A deposit notification. I didn't check it. Dinner was announced. I was guided to the far end of the table, closest to the service door. Kareem pulled out the chair, then stepped away to take a call. When he came back, his mother was already speaking again. I watched his face while she spoke about standards, about sacrifice, about knowing one's place. He nodded once. That was when I understood this wasn't about money at all. Dinner moved forward without me being invited into it. Plates arrived in a sequence I didn't understand. A soup I didn't touch. A main course I cut once and left alone. Kareem's mother directed the table the way she directed the house, with short instructions and pauses that expected obedience. She asked Kareem about his work, his schedule, the promotion he was waiting on. She spoke as if I weren't there, then turned to me only to clarify what I was not. Not from the right area, not educated the right way, not exposed to certain circles. She said these things as statements, not questions. Kareem didn't interrupt. He didn't correct her. When his father cleared his throat, once, it sounded like a habit, not a warning. At 7:18 p.m., a server refilled my water glass. I nodded. I noticed my phone again in my bag, vibrating once, then stopping. I didn't reach for it. His mother asked if I cooked. She asked if I knew how to manage a household properly. She said it would be an adjustment. She said marriage required understanding one's limits. Kareem smiled at the end of the table and said nothing when dessert arrived. She leaned back and looked at me fully for the first time. "You seem nice," she said. "Simple. That's good. Simple women don't expect much." Kareem laughed lightly, not unkind, not defensive, just enough to move the conversation along. At 7:46 p.m., dinner ended. Chairs scraped. Dishes were removed. His mother stood and said she had an early morning. She kissed Kareem's cheek and nodded at me once. His father followed her out without looking back. In the entryway, Kareem reached for my coat. "She's old-fashioned," he said. "Don't take it personally." I didn't, I said. We left at 8:02 p.m. The gate opened automatically. The driveway lights stayed on after us. On the drive back, he talked about traffic, about a meeting he had Monday, about how impressive the house must have felt to me. He asked if I was tired. He didn't ask how I felt. At 8:29 p.m., we stopped at a light. His phone buzzed. He checked it, then put it face down. "My mother wants to see you tomorrow," he said. "Just you." "For what?" I asked. "She wants to talk," he said. "Clear the air." I nodded. At home, I changed into sleep clothes and set my bag on the chair by the window. I finally checked my phone. 2 deposit alerts. 1 client invoice paid early. Another new contract signed. The amounts were familiar. The timing wasn't. I placed the phone screen down and went to bed. The next morning, Kareem left before me. He kissed my forehead and said his mother would text the address. I made coffee and drank it standing up. At 9:12 a.m., her message arrived. A time, an address, no greeting. I arrived at 10:58 a.m. A different house, smaller, quieter, no staff visible. She opened the door herself and didn't invite me to sit right away. She offered tea. I declined. She smiled and said that was fine. She sat across from me and folded her hands. "I'll be direct," she said. This isn't going to work. I waited. She said Kareem had responsibilities, expectations, a future that required alignment. She said love wasn't enough. She said people like me adjusted better, with help. At 11:14 a.m., she slid an envelope across the table. It was thick, heavy paper, my name written neatly on the front. This is for your time, she said, to make a clean decision. Disappear quietly. Kareem doesn't need to know the details. I didn't open it. She continued. She said this was generous. She said I could start over. She said it would be easier for everyone. At 11:17 a.m., my phone vibrated. Another deposit. I let it. I thanked her for the tea she hadn't made and stood. I took the envelope with me and placed it in my bag without looking inside. I'll think about it, I said. She smiled, relieved. Of course, she said. That's wise. Outside, I sat in my car for a minute and didn't start the engine. I took the envelope out and opened it. Cash, carefully counted, an amount she believed would end me. I placed it back inside and sealed it. At 11:29 a.m., I sent myself a photo of the envelope, the contents, the address on the return card. I saved the message. Then I drove away. By the time I reached home, it was 12:06 p.m. I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, parallel to the edge, and washed my hands. I didn't open my laptop. I didn't call Kareem. I set a timer for 10 minutes and made tea I didn't drink. At 12:19, my phone rang. Kareem's name. I let it ring once more than usual, then answered. She was nice to you, right? He asked. She can be direct. She was clear, I said. He laughed softly. That's her way. At 12:24, he asked what she wanted. I said she wanted what she always wanted. Peace, order, control. I didn't use those words. I said she wanted clarity. She offered help, he asked. I said yes. He paused. She means well. After the call, I moved the envelope into a drawer with old manuals and spare keys. I took a photo of the drawer closed and saved it. Then I opened my calendar and added a note for Friday at 4 p.m. No description, just the time. By mid-afternoon, messages arrived from Kareem in short bursts. He asked if I was okay. He asked if I felt insulted. He asked if I understood the pressure his family was under. I replied once at 3:12 p.m. with, I'm fine. At 3:28, his mother texted me. I trust you'll do the sensible thing. No greeting, no signature. I took a screenshot and saved it. At 4:03, I forwarded the photo of the envelope to myself again, this time with the time stamp visible. I added the address card beside it and took another photo. Then I put the envelope back in the drawer and locked it. That evening, Kareem came over at 7:01 p.m. He brought dessert. He kissed my cheek. He asked how my day was. He didn't ask what his mother had said. He sat at the table and scrolled through his phone. At 7:14, I placed the envelope on the table between us. He stared at it. What's that? Your mother's, I said. He didn't open it. She shouldn't have, he said. She gets anxious. I waited. At least she's trying to make it easier, he added. For everyone. For who? I asked. He didn't answer. He picked up the envelope and weighed it in his hand, then set it back down. How much is it? I didn't count, I said. He nodded as if that settled something. We don't need to make this dramatic. At 7:22, he said he loved me. He said it quickly, like punctuation. He said his mother would come around. He said time would help. I asked him what he would do if I said no. He looked at the envelope again. Let's not jump ahead. At 7:29, his phone buzzed. He read the message and turned the screen away. She's worried, he said. She thinks you'll misunderstand. I stood and cleared the plates. The chair at the end of the table wobbled when I pushed it in. I fixed the leg with a folded receipt from my bag and didn't mention it. At 8:11, Kareem said, if you cared about me, you wouldn't put me in the middle. I looked at him then. He was calm. He wasn't angry. He was asking for something he believed he deserved. At 8:15, he said, take it, use it. We'll say you needed space. I didn't answer. At 8:19, he added, "My mother doesn't need to know what you actually make." I asked him how he knew. He shrugged. I assumed. That was the moment the room shifted. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't ask. He didn't ask if the amount would change anything. He didn't ask why it wasn't tempting. He didn't ask who I was before him. At 8:24, he stood and said he needed air. He stepped onto the balcony and made a call. I heard his voice lower. I heard my name once. When he came back in, he said, "She's afraid you'll embarrass us." I nodded. At 8:31, I took my phone out and opened my banking app. I didn't turn the screen toward him. I didn't explain. I closed it again and put the phone down. At 8:36, he said, "You're being difficult." I gathered the envelope and returned it to the drawer. I locked it. At 8:41, he said, "You could have had an easier life." I looked at him and said nothing. He left at 8:52 p.m. He didn't take dessert with him. At 9:03, my phone buzzed. A transfer confirmation. Monthly total crossed a familiar line. I saved the notification and archived it. At 9:11, Kareem texted, "We need to talk. Tomorrow. My parents' place." I replied at 9:18, "We can talk. I'll bring the envelope." At 9:21, his mother replied to my earlier message with a single word, "Good." I placed the phone face down and set an alarm for 6:30 a.m. This wasn't isolated. It had a pattern, and tomorrow it would require a choice. I arrived at Kareem's parents' house at 7:54 p.m. The gate opened before I reached the keypad. Someone had been watching. The driveway lights came on in sequence, the same way they had the night before. Inside, the living room was arranged differently. Chairs closer, coffee table cleared, no tea set. His mother stood near the window. His father sat in the armchair with the straight back. Kareem stood between them, hands in his pockets. No one asked me how I was. At 8:01, his mother gestured to the sofa. I sat. Kareem didn't. He leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. His father folded a newspaper. He wasn't reading and set it aside. "This doesn't need to be unpleasant," his mother said. "We're practical people." I placed the envelope on the table. I didn't slide it toward her. I didn't open it. I set it down flat. She smiled. "Good. Then you understand." At 8:04, she said the amount was fair. She said she'd spoken to Kareem. She said he agreed this was best. She said families had reputations to protect. I looked at Kareem. He didn't look back. At 8:07, his father spoke for the first time. "We don't want complications," he said. "We want things settled." I asked Kareem if that was what he wanted. He hesitated. Not long. Long enough. At 8:11, he said, "I don't want drama." I nodded. His mother leaned forward. "This is generous," she said. "You won't find this kind of support easily." At 8:14, she added, "We've checked. You don't have assets tied up. No dependents. You can disappear cleanly." That was the first boundary she crossed. I didn't correct her. At 8:16, Kareem said, "She's just saying there's nothing holding you back." I asked him who "we" was when she said they'd checked. He said his mother liked to be informed. At 8:18, I took my phone out and placed it on the table. Screen dark. I didn't unlock it. His mother waved a hand. "We don't need phones," she said. "We need understanding." At 8:21, she said, "You live modestly. You don't earn much. This will help you." Kareem nodded once. At 8:23, his father said, "It's settled." Then I picked up the envelope and stood. The chair scraped softly on the floor. No one moved to stop me. "I need a receipt." I said. Silence. "A receipt." Kareem repeated. "For the transaction." I said. "If I'm being paid to leave." His mother frowned. "That's not necessary." "I need it," I said. At 8:27, she said, "We don't do things that way." I nodded. "Then we don't do this." I placed the envelope back on the table and turned to Kareem. "Do you want me to leave your life for money?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. At 8:30, he said, "I don't want to fight my parents." I waited. At 8:31, he said, "I need time." His mother interrupted. "Time won't change reality." That was the second boundary crossed. Not by her. By him. At 8:34, I picked up my bag. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I walked to the door. Kareem followed me halfway, then stopped. At 8:37, his mother said behind me, "You're making a mistake." I turned and looked at her. I haven't made one yet. Outside, the air was cooler. I sat in my car and didn't start it. I opened my phone and unlocked the banking app. I didn't show anyone. I didn't call anyone. At 8:41, a message from Kareem arrived. "Let's talk tomorrow." I replied, "We did." At 8:44, his mother texted, "This didn't have to be difficult." I took a screenshot and saved it. At 8:47, I created a new folder on my phone. I named it with the date. Inside, I placed the photos of the envelope, the messages, the address, the timestamps. At 8:52, I drove away. At home, I changed into comfortable clothes and made rice. I ate standing up. I slept on the far side of the bed and set my alarm. At 6:59 a.m. the next morning, Kareem called. I didn't answer. At 7:02, he texted, "My mother says you misunderstood." At 7:04, he added, "She says you don't have anything to lose." At 7:06, I forwarded the message to myself and added it to the folder. At 7:09, I replied once, "I won't be bought." At 7:11, he replied, "That's not what this is." I didn't answer. At 7:18, my phone buzzed with a deposit alert. Monthly total updated. I saved it. At 7:21, Kareem called again. I let it ring. At 7:24, he sent another message. "We never talked about money." That was the claim. I saved it. He would repeat it. At 9:12 a.m., Kareem sent a voice note. His tone was calm, rehearsed. "We never talked about money," he said. "My parents just wanted to make things easier. You're reading into it." I didn't reply. I saved the file. At 10:03, his mother emailed. No greeting. No signature block. 3 short lines. "We didn't offer payment. We offered assistance. Kareem confirmed you misunderstood." I took a screenshot with the time visible and added it to the folder. At 10:27, Kareem texted again. "This isn't about cash. You know that." I saved it and didn't respond. By noon, the story had settled into place on their side. No offer. No envelope. No discussion. Just concern. Just help. Just misunderstanding. At 12:41 p.m., I received a message from a mutual friend. She said Kareem's mother had called her. She said they were worried about me. She said they didn't know why I was making it about money. I replied with one sentence. I didn't. At 1:06, I printed the screenshots. The paper felt thin. The ink smudged slightly where the printer paused. I stacked the pages in order. Envelope photo first. Address card. Message timestamps. The voice note transcription. At 2:18 p.m., Kareem came to my apartment without asking. He stood in the doorway and said my name once. He said we needed to fix this before it spread. Before what spreads? I asked. "This story," he said, "that my parents tried to buy you. I waited. They didn't," he added quickly. "You know they didn't." I nodded and handed him the folder. Not across the table, just into his hands. He flipped through the pages. Slowly at first, then faster. He stopped at the photo of the envelope. He looked at the return card. "That doesn't prove anything," he said. I didn't answer. He reached the screenshots of his messages. The line "we never talked about money" appeared twice. Then the earlier line from his mother, "This is for your time," disappear quietly. He read it again. "She didn't mean it like that," he said. "She was talking about support." I pointed to the receipt request message. The refusal. The line where he said, "Take it. Use it. We'll say you needed space." He went quiet. At 2:37, his phone rang. He answered. "Yes," he said. "I'm with her." He listened. "No, she's upset." He lowered his voice. "She has screenshots." He ended the call and sat down. "My mother says you're manipulating things," he said. "She says you want to embarrass us." I stood and picked up the printed pages. I put them back in order and slid them into the folder. At 3:04, I emailed a copy to myself. Subject line, timeline. I didn't add commentary. At 3:19, Kareem said, "We never talked about money," again. He said it slower this time, like repetition would make it true. I opened my laptop and played the voice note. His voice filled the room. The sentence landed exactly as he'd said it. He looked at the screen, then at the floor. At 3:33, he said, "This could hurt my career." I nodded. At 3:41, his mother called me. I let it ring once, then answered. "You're twisting this," she said. "We never offered money." I asked her to repeat that. She paused. "We never offered payment," she said. "Only help." I said, "Thank you." I ended the call and saved the call log. At 4:02, I added it to the folder. At 4:15, Kareem said, "You didn't have to record that." "I didn't," I said. "I saved it." He stood and paced once, then stopped. "What do you want?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "I want the envelope returned," I said, "with a note, in writing, that it was offered, and that I declined." He stared at me. "They'll never do that." "Then this continues," I said. At 5:09, he left without saying goodbye. At 6:22, his mother emailed again. Longer this time. More careful. "We regret the misunderstanding. No funds were exchanged. We wish you well." No mention of the envelope. No denial of its existence. Just distance. I printed it and added it to the stack. At 7:01, Kareem texted, "You're forcing me to choose." I replied at 7:08, "You already did." At 7:11, he didn't answer. At 8:19, I placed the envelope on the table and photographed it again. Same angle. Same light. I sealed it and wrote the date on the back. At 8:27, I sent one final message to Kareem. "I'm returning this tomorrow. Please don't contact me again." He read it at 8:28. The notification confirmed it. At 8:30, I turned my phone face down. Their story now contradicted itself using their own words. I didn't point it out. I didn't need to. The system did it for me. I returned the envelope the next morning at 9:08 a.m. I used a courier service with tracking. I paid in cash. I wrote the pickup time on the receipt and folded it once before putting it in my bag. At 10:11, the delivery confirmation arrived. Recipient. Accepted. No name. I didn't message Kareem. I didn't need to. The system had a timestamp now. By noon, the tone changed. At 12:37 p.m., Kareem texted, "Why did you send it back like that?" I didn't reply. At 1:02, his mother emailed again. The subject line read closure. The body was brief. "We consider this matter resolved. Please refrain from contacting our family." I archived it. At 1:19, a mutual friend called. She asked if everything was okay. She said Kareem's mother had told people I'd misunderstood a gesture and reacted poorly. She said they were worried about my stability. I thanked her for checking in. I didn't correct her. At 2:04, another message arrived from Kareem. "My parents are upset. They think you're escalating." I didn't respond. At 2:46, I noticed I'd been removed from a group chat I hadn't posted in for weeks. The title changed from family dinner to dinner plans. I took a screenshot and saved it to the folder. At 3:15, an unfamiliar number called. I let it ring. A voicemail followed. It was Kareem's aunt. She spoke carefully. She said families sometimes misunderstood each other. She said it would be easier if I let this go quietly. I saved the voicemail. At 3:58, Kareem sent another message. "They're asking why you're keeping records." I didn't answer. At 4:22, his mother made a mistake. She forwarded an email to me that wasn't meant for me. The subject line read, "Narrative." The body listed bullet points. No cash offered. She declined support. Emotional reaction. Kareem caught in the middle. It ended with, "Stick to this." I took a screenshot. Then another with the metadata visible. At 4:29, she sent a follow-up. "Please disregard previous message. Sent in error." I archived both. At 4:41, I added the screenshots to the folder and renamed it Timeline Complete. At 5:03, Kareem called. I answered this time. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. His voice was low. Controlled. I returned what wasn't mine. I said, "You're making my family look bad," he said. "I didn't tell anyone anything. I said—" He paused. "My mother says you're documenting to threaten us." I didn't reply. At 5:17, he said, "You could end this by saying it was a misunderstanding." I asked him to say that he knew about the envelope. He didn't. At 5:21, he said, "You're choosing this over me." I waited. At 5:24, he said, "If you cared about our future." I ended the call. At 5:31, he texted, "You didn't have to hang up." I didn't answer. At 6:02, a courier returned with a signature request. A note was attached. Package refused. The envelope had been sent back again, unopened. I photographed the refusal slip and saved it. At 6:18, Kareem texted, "They won't accept it. What do you want now?" I replied once. Nothing. At 6:27, his mother emailed, "We have advised Kareem to reconsider this engagement. Please do not contact us again." I archived it. At 7:10, Kareem sent a final message. "I can't fight my parents." I didn't respond. At 7:34, I cooked dinner, rice and vegetables. The pan handle was loose. I tightened the screw and wiped the counter. I ate at the table and cleared my plate. At 8:06, I noticed a folder on my desktop. I backed it up to an external drive and labeled it with the date. I unplugged the drive and put it in a drawer beneath old documents. At 8:29, Kareem's red receipt appeared under my last message. He didn't write back. At 8:42, I turned off the lights in the living room and left one lamp on. I set my phone face down and didn't check it again. The collapse didn't come with noise. It came with missed calls, forwarded emails, and a script that fell apart when it was copied too many times. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't correct the story. I let their coordination fail on its own. The next morning started like any other. My alarm went off at 6:30. I turned it off on the first ring. The floor was cold when I stepped out of bed. I opened the window halfway, then closed it again. I made coffee and drank it at the counter while checking nothing on my phone. At 7:12 a.m., a new email arrived from Kareem. No subject, just one line. "I need to talk to you. Alone." I didn't reply. At 7:46, his mother sent another message. This one was addressed formally. "We believe distance is best for everyone involved." I archived it without opening the thread. By 8:20, the apartment felt normal again. I washed the mug and placed it upside down on the towel. I changed the sheets. I folded the blanket Kareem had left behind and put it in the hall closet. I didn't rush. At 9:03, I transferred my monthly earnings into a different account. Same amount as usual. Same confirmation screen. I saved the receipt and logged out. Around noon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. A voicemail followed. Kareem's voice. Slower than usual. He said his parents were disappointed. He said they felt attacked. He said he didn't know how things escalated so quickly. He said he missed me. I saved the voicemail. I didn't respond. At 12:41 p.m., I deleted my calendar reminder for Friday at 4 p.m. It wasn't needed anymore. In the afternoon, I went grocery shopping. The store was crowded. A cart wheel rattled behind me. I bought vegetables, rice, and tea. Nothing extra. At checkout, the card reader paused, then approved the transaction. I put the receipt in my bag and didn't look at it again. At 3:18, Kareem texted, "My parents say you embarrassed them." I read it. I didn't reply. At 4:02, he added, "They think you planned this." I set the phone down. At 4:15, I received another deposit notification. I didn't save it this time. By early evening, the silence had settled into something final. Not dramatic, not heavy, just finished. At 6:09 p.m., Kareem showed up downstairs. He didn't have a key anymore. The intercom buzzed once, then again. I didn't answer. After a minute, it stopped. At 6:27, he texted, "I'm outside." I didn't move. At 6:34, another message came in. "If you walk away like this, you're choosing money over us." I read it once. Then I deleted the entire thread. At 7:11, I cooked dinner. The burner clicked twice before lighting. I stirred the pot and tasted the food. It was fine. I ate at the table and cleared my plate. I wiped the counter until it was clean. Later, I opened my laptop and reviewed my contracts. Same clients, same terms. One renewal due next month. I confirmed it and closed the file. At 9:02 p.m., a final message arrived from Kareem. I can't go against my parents. There was nothing else after that. I didn't block him. I didn't need to. Before bed, I backed up my files one last time and shut the laptop. I set my phone on the nightstand, screen down, and turned off the light. Tomorrow would look like today. Work, routine, quiet. Some people believe money is what separates worlds. Others believe class is about what you wear, where you sit, who speaks for you. I learned something simpler. When someone tries to buy your silence, they're already telling you where you stand. And when the person you love stays silent too, the choice has already been made. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't expose anyone publicly. I didn't ask to be chosen. I just stopped waiting. And that was enough. A week later, I changed my routine without thinking about it. I started waking earlier, not because I had to, but because the mornings felt quieter. I worked from the small desk by the window instead of the dining table. The chair there didn't wobble. At 9:18 a.m. on Tuesday, a new contract came through. Same rate, same scope. I signed it and archived the email. No celebration, no pause. Kareem didn't write again. His mother didn't either. The silence held. On Thursday afternoon, I donated the dress I'd worn to their house. It was still in good condition. I folded it once and placed it in the bag. At the counter, the receipt printed slowly, the ink faint. I thanked the cashier and left. That evening, I organized my finances. I renamed one folder. I closed an account I didn't use anymore. I updated a password I'd been meaning to change for months. Each confirmation screen appeared, then disappeared. A mutual acquaintance messaged once to say Kareem was struggling. I read it and didn't respond. The message didn't ask anything of me. At the end of the month, I paid rent early. The confirmation came at 7:03 p.m. I didn't screenshot it. One night, I caught myself reaching for my phone to check if he'd written. I stopped. I set the phone down and washed a glass instead. I placed it upside down on the towel and turned off the kitchen light. People talk about closure as if it arrives with a conversation. Mine arrived with paperwork, timestamps, and a door that stayed closed. Nothing dramatic followed. No apology. No reversal. No last-minute realization. Life continued in small, practical ways. I worked. I rested. I kept what I earned. I chose where to sit and when to leave. Class wasn't what they thought it was. It wasn't the house or the table or the way someone speaks. It was the moment money was offered to erase me, and I didn't disappear. I didn't correct their version of events. I didn't demand understanding. I didn't wait for permission. I moved on quietly with everything that was already mine, and that was enough. Months later, the memory of that house softened at the edges. Not because it mattered less, but because it stopped asking for space in my day. On a Friday at 5:18 p.m., I closed my laptop and shut the blinds. The desk lamp clicked once before lighting. I wrote a short list for the weekend and crossed off the first item, groceries. I put the paper under a magnet and left it there. A message arrived from a number I didn't recognize. No greeting, just a sentence about how things had settled down on their end. I didn't reply. I deleted it and cleared the trash. I kept my life small and exact. Bills paid early, files named properly, contracts renewed without conversation. When something didn't fit, I didn't argue with it. I removed it. Once at a cafe, I saw a woman who dressed like Kareem's mother. The same posture, the same way of looking at people as if they were items to be assessed. I finished my drink, returned the cup to the counter, and left before she noticed me. At home, I replaced a light bulb that had flickered for weeks. The room stayed bright after that. I put the ladder away and wash my hands. Nothing about my life announced itself anymore. No explanations. No defenses. No waiting. If someone asked what happened, I said it ended. If they asked why, I said it didn't work. That was enough. I didn't lose love. I lost access to a room where silence was expected and dignity had a price tag. I kept the parts that mattered. My time, my work, my name. When money was used to measure me, I stepped out of the equation. And when silence was offered as the final compromise, I accepted it on my terms.